Hi, and welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'd like to wish a good local time to everyone. Before we start, I'll let you know a little bit about us and today's conversation. The main purpose of the Industry 4.0 Club is to accelerate the evolution to Industry 4.0 by having engaging discussions among innovators, leaders, and manufacturing professionals. This is Women in Manufacturing, our Tuesday conversation with the focus on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we touch on the perspectives of women in the industry. We'd like to welcome you to the last of our fall series where we've introduced to you women who've worked in various roles in industrial software engineering and manufacturing and Industry 4.0. I'm Carol Mitchell-Lin, an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder. For over 6 years, I've been creating content for I4.0 adoption in manufacturing. When I'm not supporting my fellow co-founders, I'm a content marketing specialist at Fuse Data in Toronto, Canada. What we do at Fuse Data is help leaders in their data modernization with people-centric data products. In the end, it helps to improve work life and helps reach business goals at the same time. I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow I4.0 Club co-founder, Lucy Ashton. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Sheila. As Carol mentioned, I'm also a part of the Industry 4.0 Club. I also run MX.0 Media, and we have manufacturer-led conferences around the US. We bring manufacturers together to learn from one another how to advance digital transformation. And in 2024, we've got events coming up in Greenville, South Carolina, Seattle, and Ohio.
Thank you, Lucy. And I'd like to introduce our guest today, Sheila Kester. Sheila is an industry veteran who is the COO at Digital Thread, Twin Thread. And thank you very much, Sheila, for taking time out of your day to be with us.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, I'm Sheila, and I'm going to take a little bit of maybe an unusual turn in introducing myself. I'm the mother of 4 children, ranging in age from late teens to early 20s. Married, I have an aging parent that I spend time on. I love my friends. I am a lifelong student, sometimes formally, mostly informally. I'm always interested in knowing what other people know that I don't, because I found that it's usually the reason why I disagree with someone. And I am the COO of Twin Thread. I've spent my entire career in industrial automation. I was educated as a computer scientist and did that early in my career. Pretty rapidly moved into customer-facing roles, have run P&Ls at Wonderware and Intolution. GE bought the business Intolution where I was working. I spent many years with them, again, P&L leadership, and then made a decision to step back a bit and move into more operational leadership roles at GE, and then left and joined my current company, which was being headed up by a former boss of mine who called me and asked me to join. And it was the right offer at the right time. And I've been there for the last 5+ years. It's AI, it's artificial intelligence, and how it can impact manufacturing operations. And it has been a really, really fun ride. And it's really fun to see what we can do for customers in manufacturing.
That's great. Well, it's a great introduction, and sounds like you've got a lot of experience and had some fun, which is always important.
Yeah.
I love the company name, Twin Thread. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and what it means to you?
Sure. I mean, when you think about artificial intelligence, which sounds terribly scary, really all it is about taking in a bunch of data, correlating that data, contextualizing that data, and then using machine learning to make things happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we do. We offer a complete industrial data supply chain solution where data is brought in from any number of data sources. And you guys all know that if you're manufacturing, you need data from lots of different places. It's not necessarily related. It comes in different time slices and so on. Pull all that in. We make a picture of it. Then we use digital twins. So that's the twin of Twin Thread to basically model what's going on in the factory, to model equipment, model processes. And then we use threads to model movement. And it's to explain how the process moves from beginning to end. And also when we want new or different movement to happen, what should happen? So when this alert comes up, send this signal to the SCADA system. That would be a thread. And so twins and threads are the foundation of what we do, and that's why they're a part of our name.
You mentioned something, Sheila, there that sparked my curiosity. Something about predictive do you do predictive modeling?
We do. And we do. It's part of the data supply chain, but it's only part, because one of the things that we now know is you can't tell anybody you can predict anything until you look at their data. And in order to predict when something's going to change, you need to have anomalous behavior in the data that you're looking for. And so in some cases, when we work with clients, what we find is they're not connected enough to the data that they need to predict behavior. So we start with them saying, all right, well, let's start by historizing. Let's start by connecting in the data from your energy meters, which may or may not have ever been used before. We do modeling all along the way. And so there's different types of modeling, of which predictive modeling is only one. We do modeling of just your production processes. First, I'm going to get this wrong, first form analytics, that's not right, but non-predictive analytics. Then we move to machine learning, which is when predictive analytics come in. We found that people first gain a lot from just understanding what's happening in their process as it is, and then working with us to identify what's anomalous about that process. And in manufacturing, there are many anomalies that are normal. It's normal to have product changeovers. It's normal to have plant shutdowns. It's normal not to work 3 shifts. And so we work with people to basically say, let's identify what is fine to get to a definition of what is truly what you expect to happen in a production process, and then set artificial intelligence and machine learning to work to identify anomalies, to drill into the root causes, to allow you to fix those root causes, to predict when root causes are likely to happen. And that prediction is based on just a very, very deep ability to analyze and understand the data that's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, thank you. Now, what I'm curious about is when you're talking about machine learning and big data, could you give us, a lot of people are still learning about it, because I think in this context, we're not talking about generative AI, right? We're talking about ML. How big is big data? Could you put it into some context?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how big is big data? Not all that big. I mean, I do think that sometimes, data storage people are trying to say, you absolutely have to have 3 years worth of data. You don't. So in terms of what has to happen in order for AI to work, you need enough data with some variation in it. You need the data to be good. And so when I say good, here's an example, which sounds crazy, but I promise you it's true. People measure weights with the same unit of measure differently. Mm-hmm. Well, that data, if you bring it together for comparison purposes, isn't going to be good. It isn't going to be good. It's going to, if analyzed, it's going to produce a bad result. So it needs to be good. And you usually need minimally 3 months of it to be able to take action on it. And you also need as much different types of data as you can get your hands on. But if all you have is one thing, then you can start. I object to this monstrous behemoth called AI and machine learning and predictions and big data, because you're like crushed under the weight of all of it. It is not heavy. It over time, as you're gaining more value from what you're learning and you can make a business case for it, it can get heavier, it will get heavier, but so will the outputs, so will the business value that you've obtained for it, or you won't make it heavier. So in our case, very specifically, big data for us is process historians. It's MES data. It's data from LIMS systems or other types of quality systems, cost data from energy systems. Sometimes it's standard work instructions, which come from, a company like Augmentir, for example, or something along those lines. That's the type of data that we're talking about. That's all. And again, and everyone here knows this, but time slices in manufacturing are also different than time slices in the enterprise. And so one of the other things that we need to think about in terms of big data is big data's definition is different for manufacturing than it is for the purchasing people who want to have a look inside what's going on in manufacturing. So again, a part of our process is to bring it in, contextualize it as we pull it in, and then contextualize and curate it as we send it out, right? Someone who is planning supply chain work doesn't need to know at the sub-second level. They don't need to know at the shift level. They probably don't even need to know by day. And so why send them all of that weight when it really isn't necessary? And so context and really thinking about how people are going to consume this data is something that I think is well worth putting thought into.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your passion for something that actually is very quite technical, and the way you describe it is very helpful. Actually, you're able to. I'm not an engineer, and I understood everything that you said, and it's very interesting. And another thing when we first met that I found that you were very passionate about was using software not just for business or solving problems, but using software in the term that we use called tech for good.
Yeah.
And I wanted to leverage your experience, and we're maybe in two parts. If you could share with us where you've seen it happen, where you've helped your customers, and then where you've seen it where you helped your customers help their customers.
Sure. So helping our customer, we have done work for a large drinks manufacturer who is drinks, and so when they look at we'll call it natural resource consumption, they're less worried about, let's say, gas or oil. They're worried about water, because in order to make drinks, you consume water. And they were given a challenge by the city that they were in to say, we're in a drought situation here. We have got to, you are our number one consumer of this incredibly finite resource. We've got to do better. And we work with them, and over a period of a couple of years, they actually won an award as the Citizen of the Year award within the city, because they were able to reduce their water consumption by like 40% while making more product, right? Because I wrote an article once, which is to say, you can conserve natural resources by shutting the factory down. Poof, we're not using anything anymore. That's not realistic. And so what you have to look at is how things are being made and identify where there's waste. Where are we using water that we don't need to use water? And frankly, it's a pretty easy calculation, right? If you add up the number of bottles that you produce and all of them having your measure on them, and you've used any more than that in making it, then there's an opportunity to save something. And that's what we were able to do with them. I'm really proud of that. And by the way, that is one of the reasons why I am so passionate, because, this stuff actually keeps waste out of landfills, and it keeps water in reservoirs, and it doesn't pollute the atmosphere, because we look at how things are made. You can make things and make them well. I believe it.
And is that your, just thinking outside your company too, is that your favorite tech for good story? I mean, you must have quite a few examples.
Oh, geez, I have tons and tons and tons. And I think they're mostly related to this. I'll tell a little bit of an aside story, which is all of our customers have been faced by, the great COVID walk-off of their people, whether it was, people died, or people just decided to retire, and young people aren't coming into manufacturing the way that they once did. And so sometimes I think automation and virtualization is viewed negatively from a personnel perspective. With a particular customer that we worked with, their average tenure went from, I'll say, 12 years to 2.5 years in a period of about 3 years. And half of their people had been at the company under a year. And yet their overall performance and their overall satisfaction with their jobs went up over that same period. Why? because they used us to identify things that could be automated away, right? And one of them actually quoted, eliminating a dirty, boring job. And you guys know, I mean, manufacturing has a lot of dirty jobs associated with it. And the other was not leaving someone who doesn't have experience alone to solve a problem. We helped this company create what we call a virtual center of excellence, which connects the need with the resource wherever they are, right? If you're in England and I'm here outside of Boston and I'm in trouble, let me send you my data. Let me show you what's going on, and you'll get on with me and help me figure it out. I mean, there's a lot of power in that. We're all built on what we can make economically, and we need to continue to make things and make them well. And people are and will always be a critical part of that.
And do you think that the tech for good element of manufacturing can help attract younger people to the industry?
I think it can. And I think also this idea of not having to wait 25 years to become a subject matter expert through this idea of more virtually sharing and growing is immensely attractive. I'm asked questions certainly today that I wasn't asked 20 years ago in terms of what is our approach to lifelong learning? How are we impacting the environment? And we're a software company. So the answer is we impact the environment almost not at all from a negative point of view, but it gives us an opportunity to say, here's what we can do for you. And yeah, people do care. And I think it's good they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
One thing I've seen when it comes to corporate responsibility, sometimes clients or customers would actually, part of the agreement would be that you would support their initiatives, just as in that extra layer of support. If you're a virtual company that doesn't have an impact, then you should be prepared to support the initiatives of your customers.
Yeah, and we are. In fact, one of the things that we talk about a lot when we work on manufacturing projects and we get these, each EHS or sustainability types of mandates is to say, let's just make sure everyone's goals are lined up, right? Because again, my experience is if you are all aligned to the same goals and you don't agree, then it's just a data issue. You got to figure out what data one person has that the other doesn't. If you're not aligned from a goals point of view, you're in trouble. And so I have seen situations where corporate level objectives are not aligned to a plant manager's objectives. Plant managers typically tasked with making as much or as little as she or he possibly can. And what is typically asked for in these types of initiatives is extra work. It's putting in new systems and new accountability, and it's looking at data in a different way. Well, I could do this, but it would cost me more. Well, if this is important over here, we're going to have to give the plant manager leeway to spend a little more money in order to fulfill that common good mandate. So yes, I just gave you an answer probably you weren't expecting, but yes, we have to be in support, and we also have to hold up to say dissonance here that we need to look at.
One of the software tech for good things that I really like, and something that you said makes a lot of sense, where a lot of the initiatives are impacting time, but I like software that saves lives. And one of the areas that I've, when I was researching before we hopped on, is the safety on the shop floor. And as the hardware side, sensors and other hardware are improving, the software it enables the software to help make processes and workflows safer for the people on the front line. And sometimes I think one of the things that I like is it helps people keep in check. And because you have the workflow that shows that you have to do X, Y, Z, it might take more time, but it saves lives.
Yep, and I think technology is crucial to that. You know, as I mentioned, less experienced people are now doing jobs in manufacturing that are inherently dangerous. And so how can we use that technology? And that part of it to me is knowledge sharing. Part of it to me is actually seeing what we can do to automate away the dangerous or more dangerous portions. Part of it is really looking at the work process and seeing how it can be aided by artificial intelligence. Because from what I hear about workplace accidents, it's a mistake. Like nobody sets out to have an accident. It's a mistake of fatigue. It's a mistake of inexperience. It's a process failure. And all of those things are things that properly applied technology can help with.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too what you said about it shouldn't have to take 25 years to become a subject expert, and how companies can perhaps enable or support the development of their workforce. Or I'm just thinking, for example, we have a speaker coming up in Southeast who's in pricing, but they've taken the initiative to build a tech for good solution. It's a heat exchanger that connects to beds and is being merged with a tent project for refugees. And this is obviously separate to his day-to-day role, but Train Technologies have enabled him to think outside the box and create something and become a subject expert in that area, which I think is a really good example.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also call it, because I think that technology can help, and we created our energy application not because we necessarily knew that it would yield results, because energy projects are hard because the data isn't often there to support them, but because they align with our goals of contributing in a positive way to the environment, and we know they align with our companies, and we share our time. So our CEO for a long time was a fellow with UVA and worked with entrepreneurial startups, many of whom are working on change the world types of technologies. And I'm not just saying this because he's my boss. I mean, he's terrifically pragmatic. He's a serial entrepreneur. And an hour of his time is something that we don't want to lose as a company, but we are willing to give collectively because it matters to send out people into the world with their ideas, well equipped to succeed with them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to I know you've already talked a lot about data, Sheila, but I want to talk more about some more maybe specific use cases. So like wherever you have software, you have data. And what practical use cases do you really get behind when you're working with your customers? For example, I saw an application that monitors anomalies in batch processing. And what this really does is addresses a lot of the lean manufacturing and eliminating waste is something that you already talked about. And it prevents having to do redos. So like in that vein, what use cases, even what are those go-to use cases that really come to mind first when you're first having your first touch points with a customer?
So a lot of them are around quality. Everyone wants to be able to deliver to spec, right? And many of our customers, in other words, it's not pass fail the way it is in discrete manufacturing. I should have said that. Most of our customers are process manufacturers. It's quality level A, B, C. And if they set out to make quality A, they want to deliver quality A. And if they don't, then there is often a mismatch with what a supply chain or a customer might be expecting. I read a whole thing yesterday about the cream in Oreos, and I just thought to myself, well, if it's not deliberate, then there's either a quality or process problem going on there. I wonder what it is. So quality comes up quite a bit. Unplanned downtime comes up quite a bit. because especially in our industries, it takes a lot, and there's wasted product, for example, and startup energy costs to stop a production process. And I'll give you an example. We were working with a sheet manufacturer who makes the tint that goes on car windows and office building windows and whatever, so the sun doesn't shine in and just bleach everything and heat things up. And the process is pretty simple to describe. You have raw material come in on a roll, it unrolls as it's treated, and then it's re-spooled or rolled again. And the film is breaking. And every time the film breaks, they have to stop the process, cut off the product that can't be used, re-spool, put a new spooler in on the other side, and start again. And the downtime could be hours. And so we work with them to get that project up and running. I think cycle time is another major place that we look, which is, why does it take it as long to make things as it does? And that ends up causing capacity. It has impact on capacity. So in good times, and a number of our customers during COVID were makers of diapers and toilet paper. And I know we don't like to remember the bad old times, but diapers and toilet paper couldn't stay on the shelves. And so they wanted to make sure that they could make as much as they could possibly make, not just to make money, but because people were desperate. So that's cycle time discussion to say, what are the steps or variances that are causing us to slow down? And what can we do to make as much as we possibly can on the line that we have? On the converse, in downtimes, if someone's running 3 lines, then there's a lot of pressure to see what you can do to make the same product or slightly less product on 2 lines. And you really want to understand how to do that, how to improve your overall efficiency so that you can do that if you need to. Those are the ones that we talk about right away: quality, efficiency, avoiding unplanned downtime. And let me say this thing also about quality that's really important right now. We don't have a customer that isn't impacted by inflation. So everything is more expensive, sometimes double digits more expensive. And so we do a lot of work now on material waste to make sure that we don't have to rework, that we don't have to scrap, because all the raws are so expensive. It's just, no. Let's know, what can we do to minimize what we have to use to reduce what we need to use? I would say right now, that's a discussion every single time.
Yeah. And just very understandable.
Yeah.
Well, I know we could talk a lot for a long time about a lot of things, but I've got a question, given it's the Women in Manufacturing panel, about when you were at GE.
Yeah.
You were involved in the Women's Network. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that experience was like and how it impacted the women there?
Sure. And so I think GE does a really good job with affinity groups. And in this case, it was the GE Women's Network with, at the time when I was there, drew women from NBC and GE Capital, aviation, healthcare, digital, which is where I was. And so we were together for a while before what I'm going to talk about happens. And we're interested in moving women, helping women along in their careers and doing mentorship and so on. But our CEO came to us at the time super frustrated. When people start their careers at GE, the split between women and men was about 50-50. And by the time someone reached executive band, which is you're pretty much running a PLL, when you get to this level, it was basically 80-20. So 20% women, 80% men. And when you got to sales, it was like 92-8. And he just said, this can't be. We are taking these people in, we are training them, and they're leaving. What's going on? And so we embarked on something. It took us a good year to do. We surveyed women at every level in the organization and said, are you thinking about this anonymous survey? Are you thinking about leaving? Do you know someone who's left? Help us understand why. If there was a position available, would you apply for it now? If yes, why? If no, why? And the responses were pretty sobering. Number one, everyone was thinking of leaving or knew someone who had left. And said, I don't have anybody here who looks like me. I have small children, or I think about having small children, and I don't want to work the way the people that I see working. I don't want to do that. Nobody's here helping me find the jobs. I hear about these jobs being filled, and I never had a chance to apply for them. I don't see the flexibility that I might need as I move forward in my career, as I care for my parents, or whatever the case may be. And then we did a whole bunch of interviews as well with executive leaders about hiring to say, it's funny, on your exec team, there's only one woman. Why is that? And we got some fair answers around saying, I feel like I'm competing in a pretty narrow pool, and others to say, well, I can't find them. Well, where are you looking? Well, I've looked where I've always looked. Well, you're going to have to look somewhere else. And so we rolled all this up into a few different initiatives, some of which I really think the company is responsible and accountable for, which is publicize jobs. Make sure that they're not hired through a back door or backroom network, right? The room where it happens, to quote Hamilton, one of my favorites. Make sure that doesn't happen, because it happens a lot. Avoid things like golf and necessarily sports. Create affinity with your teams and with others through the company or other sorts of common goals. Create mentorship programs and really celebrate the time that needs to be established. Goal people on whether they're mentoring, not necessarily even just a woman, but someone who is an underrepresented class. When we say that what we want, and I believe what we wanted and what everyone should want, is a diversity of opinion, a diversity of background. I have different information than you. Why is that? Well, I come from a different place than you. My experience is different than yours. We're aligned on the same goals. My experience and background will be additive to this. We also, I think in COVID, really, I was gone by then, but I think would have put this to bed anyway. This concept of it's impossible to work in a senior level role at GE and have kids. It's not possible. I mean, it is possible. I worked there and had kids. It was hard, and we'll talk about that, I think, in a little bit, but it's easier now. There was a culture of having to be in the office 5 days a week. You don't actually have to be in the office 5 days a week to be effective, and there's some balance to be had there. That's something else the company needs to do. And then what mentors have to coach women on, I think, and I'm making gross generalizations here, but I have not heard someone dispute them, is we also surveyed men, and we said, if there was a job out there and it required 5 things and you had 1, would you apply? Most men are going to apply. Women won't. And say to women, apply. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have experience interviewing with someone who might help you. You'll have an experience to learn about how to sell and market yourself. So that was the first thing. The second is that women have been socialized to believe that talking about themselves in a positive way is bragging. It is not. It's marketing. What's your brand? But that is, you need someone to say to someone, you need to be doing this. You don't need to be overblown. You can stick to facts, but when someone says to you, have you succeeded? The answer is yes. It's not, well, I don't know, or it was a team effort. The answer is yes. Of course it's a team effort. Claim your space. Claim your space. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Negotiate the higher salary. Ask the questions. You are entitled to know. Yes, it's uncomfortable, and you have to get over that. You just do. So we did a lot of work. I would like to say that we moved the needle immeasurably. We didn't, not in the time I was there, but we started conversations that, as far as I know, are still going on. I apologize if I talk too long. This is another one of my passions.
No, it's great. I mean, everything you say just is so apparent across so many different industries too.
Last week I was at the ATX event that was held here in Toronto, and I managed to get there to listen to one of the co-founders from the I4.0 Club. Jason Bean was on the panel, and the topic of discussion was the challenges in the workplace. And they did focus a lot on neurodiverse employees, but the general consensus was that employer flexibility was definitely one thing that people are looking at now, as well as the flexible hour times. And Grace and I have talked about it a lot before. Special flexible hours for women who have kids in school, to be specific. And also another thing was where they're hiring from. And you also talked about that, Sheila. Instead of going to the usual places, there needs to be more practices, so more out of the box ways to reach out to people to work. And one of the examples was instead of going to specific universities, sometimes people go to the tried and true Ivy League to look for people. Maybe go to the community college and look for people. So there's definitely we're on the same page here in Canada.
Yeah, and I think I do think, and I talk about this. This really doesn't happen where I work now, but I'll have someone say, well, if they have a sick kid, they're just going to go home, and I'm looking at them going, do you know who you're talking to? I mean, are you kidding me? Like, if you have a sick kid, are you going home? Let's not assume. Let's not assume. And if they do go home, so what? The work will be there tomorrow. And that is how we approach things, which is our attitude at my company about most policies like this is don't be a jerk, right? We don't have a vacation policy. Don't be a jerk. Take the vacation that you need. Take the time to take care of a parent. Take the time to bring your kid to school. Don't leave your colleagues in the lurch, right? You need it, and it does require really excellent communication skills. But let's just let people work when they work. And if we have to have core hours, which we do try to do because there's a lot of value in collaboration, let's try to make sure that they map to school hours mostly if we can. And just roll on with it, right? I have spent more calls in the backseat of my car at a softball game than I can count on my fingers and toes. Nobody said boo. I wanted to be at my kid's softball game, and I wanted to also participate in important discussions. So I did in my car.
I think if you don't make a big deal out of it, then.
And I didn't. I mean, I made sure I was paying attention. I made sure my background was blurred, and again, internal meetings are different than customer meetings, and you do have to be aware of what your customers' expectations are. And when I had to do something like that, typically I did it on the phone, and I warned them about where I was. I tried not to do that, but I warned them about where I was if I had to be there.
I know we're on this train of thought, but I wanted to catch a question that we had from one of the audience members, and Nita, I don't know if she's still there. If she's still there live, but her question was, are there any software tools existing that acts as a central point of truth for different people, like plant managers and CFO, for example, as they have different goals? And you did mention that there's a bit of a data segmentation there when you have the shop floor. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a phrase enterprise data lakes, and that's, I think, the answer to that question. And then the magic of enterprise data lakes is just as the magic is for manufacturing, which is serving up data in the right level of granularity and understanding who is going to consume it, right? You don't need to dump your process historian into the enterprise data lake. You do need to put up your metrics around OEE and first best quality and the things that a CFO is going to care about, right? And is going to tie to production metrics from SAP, if that's what you're working with. But I do think that enterprise data lakes are the answer to that question. So.
Okay, thanks very much for changing our train of thought there for a moment. Now, I would like to get back to that and cite a research paper that we found between Ericsson Global and Northern Arizona University. And they specifically surveyed the women at Ericsson around the world in software engineering. And the greatest challenge that was reported, 55% of the women reported work-life balance issues. And how have you've mentioned several things and how you work around them, but is there anything else still you'd like to add on work-life balance issues? And I guess part B would be, how do you approach that at Twin Thread where you are now?
I don't think there's any such thing as work-life balance. I don't. I think that what there are the priorities of today. And sometimes life is going to be the priority. One of the people I work with had pretty serious surgery unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. And she said to me this morning as she's in work, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, you could work from home right now. And she said, well, I didn't want to ask why. Right now, life is the capital level and work is the lower level. And it also sometimes means that work is, I've missed stuff that I didn't want to miss, but I have to make the choices to work the job that I do. I think you make choices based on what's going on right now and try to make sure that you have a job that's aligned to the choices that you want to make, because that's, again, what are your employer's objectives for you against your own. You make sure those are aligned. A supportive partner, I can't say enough about having a supportive partner. When I traveled a lot when my kids were small, he didn't. And we had a rule that said we would never leave our kids on their own. Like, one of us would always be there. And we stuck to that. And I left GE when his travel was scaling up and mine wasn't going to scale down. And I'm like, okay, well, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to make this move. Childcare, quality childcare, when your children are small and not in school. If I hadn't had two people over the 12 years that I had childcare, if I hadn't had them, I'm not sure I could have done it. In fact, I know I couldn't have, because in terms of what I value, my family is first, my family is last, my family is always. And if I had felt that my children weren't in good hands, then I wouldn't have done the work that I did. I was lucky enough, again, to have a spouse who was also working. And so I realized this is not possible for everyone, but I think good quality childcare does go a long way to allowing women to do what they want. And but I will tell you again, it's not easy. I've cried more than I want to think about. Technology, by the way, is awesome. Like, I text with my kids now every day. One is in New York, one's in Denver, one's in Indiana, one is next door, but I still text with her anyway because she seems to like it. And it helps. Like, for all the things that are wrong with connectivity and social media and whatever, like, I'm able to stay connected even when I'm not with them, which I think has made things easier.
I do video chats with my mom and dad.
Yep.
And I remember my dad, but I remember when I was in grade school, my dad talking about Bell Labs here in Canada, and they were experimenting with this video phone thing.
Yeah.
And, I never thought that I'd be, a big part of connecting with my parents.
Right.
Would be that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, especially during the pandemic.
Yes.
I couldn't go home for 2 years, so definitely came in helpful then.
Yes.
I love your comment and priorities of today, because there's something about work-life balance that it never seems quite very realistic at times.
No.
Many times.
No.
Your term should definitely be coined.
Yeah, no. I mean, and I'm sharing my experience and only my experience, but it seems to mirror that of men and women, pretty much everybody I talk to. Like, there is just no such animal. There just isn't. So you do the best you can. For me and my husband, we made a list sort of of what we wanted to value first, second, and third, and that just made it easier to make some of the decisions that we made. Like for us, education was really important, and I've gone to some really brilliant places over my career. It would have been great to pull the kids out and take them with us so that we could be together. No, they need to be in school. Need to be in school because that's important to us. Someone else would make another choice, and I don't judge them their choices. Oh, by the way, one other thing I'll say is it's my experience that women judge other women poorly sometimes, and I think that's a mistake. I think everyone's trying to do the best they can, and if you look at someone who isn't making the choices you were, well, then good for them for making the choices that matter to them. Right? Doesn't make them a better worker or a better parent or a worse worker or a worse parent. They're just doing the best they can. Mm. So, yeah, that's what I think.
I wanted to share a post here from the audience. Joe, who's at Train Technologies, and we've had the pleasure of having some women in manufacturing guests from Train Technologies, and when they talk about the initiatives there and the importance they play on especially the women's network there, definitely sparked our curiosity. And so he's sharing here, thanks Joe, the fortune.com best places to work for women. So if anybody's interested in learning more.
Yeah, I actually, need to apologize to Joe because he is our speaker from the Southeast event. And when I was referencing, sorry, Joe, I was like, I haven't actually said his name. So thank you for adding that comment. He's done some really great work.
Thanks for that, for sharing your story, Sheila. And how is it now? How, like, your life has probably changed since you had a young family and your husband was working. How has that shifted? Your priorities shifted again?
Yeah, I think one thing that's had a massive impact is I work completely from home now, and have now for 8 years. Before COVID, I was able to do that, and I miss going to the office, to be honest, a couple days a week. But the kids are mostly out. I have a senior in high school, and then I've got 2 in college and 1 who's completely out. And so the distractions for me on a day-to-day basis are way down. The worries as a parent, and my mom said this to me a long time ago, it's harder when they're not living with you. And I think she's right. And so I worry about them more. And I will say, my parents and my husband's parents were well and healthy until COVID. And not that the day-to-day is impacted as much, but caring for elderly parents is taking up quite a bit of a larger amount of my time. But I'm so blessed to have work that I love, and people who say, when I say I need to go do X, they say go. They trust me to get the work done, which I will. I may be doing it in a hospital corridor, but I'm going to get it done. But I think that life is challenging now in a different way than it was when my children were small. When my children were small, on Friday night, I would sit down and we'd want to stream something, and my husband would say, I don't even know why you bother. You're going to be asleep 5 minutes after it starts. And I was, like, every week. And I don't feel that way now, but I guess I feel more mentally tired now. COVID was hard for everybody. And there are times when I would like to break away and just have a couple of days of quiet, but that's not to be at the moment. So, and I don't mean to sound down. I mean, again, blessed. I live a blessed life. I've worked hard, but I've had good mentors and good breaks along the way. I have a partner who's awesome. The kids are pretty good. No, the kids are great. Life is not as exhausting, but probably still as hard. But that's okay. That's life.
That's right. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to do our final thoughts, Lucy.
Yeah, well, we covered a lot. I love your priorities of today is just going to stick with me for a long time. But I think talking about more of the technology and the manufacturing side, what you were saying about like you don't need tons of data to get started. You can just get started, because that's a question that obviously we get asked a lot at our events and by manufacturers. It's like, how would you get started? How would you build the business case, etc. So thank you for answering some of that. And then everything around what you said about women and culture has been fantastic. I think it's a question of trust. The word trust, Kate, was coming up a lot in my mind when you were talking. It's like, why don't companies trust their employees? And if they don't, have you got the right employees? And maybe looking a little bit deeper at the culture you're creating.
Yeah.
But it was really great speaking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for me too, definitely the shifting priorities and life, the capital L life. As in addition to that, on maybe the manufacturing side, Sheila, it's really interesting, the conversation, and I'd like to maybe talk about it some more someday.
Sure.
Was on the current priorities right now with inflation and focusing on reducing waste with the increasing costs of raw materials. I mean, I hearing it broken down like that made a lot more sense than listening to Bloomberg. It really put some context to maybe what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for doing that, and yeah, definitely your comment on what is big data. I don't know. I think maybe you'd make a fine lecturer someday.
Not right now, but thank you.
So yeah, we'll leave the parting words with you.
Yeah, I think we are all in a fantastic space that I love a lot and have devoted my working career to. So well done, everybody here, for working in such a space where you can impact the world. You really can. You can impact the environment. You can impact, good quality product being made in the right way. And so I think it's great. Go for it. If you have an opportunity, go for it. And just maybe don't give yourself such a hard time.
Or others either. Don't give everyone else such a hard time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much, Sheila, for joining us today. If you enjoy the panel discussions and the conversations and would like updates and notifications, we encourage you to follow the Industry 4.0 Club on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Substack newsletter, Shaping the Future, which I think is in the comments, industry4.0club.com. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.